I believe from my experience, there's really no better place to start a business. I think there's a culture here. There's a community. There's people that want you to succeed. And prior to being in Detroit this time, I've lived in Phoenix, I've lived in Chicago, I've lived in New York. And I believe that Detroit has a unique culture that's really special. And there's really no better place to be an entrepreneur.
That's Andrew Landau. His Detroit-based startup, Jewel, was acquired by banking giant Capital One last week. Jewel had raised about $500,000 in funding, and the purchase price was undisclosed. But they're going to stay, grow, and hire in Detroit. So what does it take to make a startup work here? And why Detroit? That's the focus of our conversation today. We'll also get into some stories you need to know around town. I'm Jer Stays, and welcome to episode 293 of Your Daily Detroit, recorded on Tuesday, June 25th, 2019. But first, thanks to Milo. Milo is a marketing agency that produces amazing experiences for audiences. Milo partners with their clients to drive business with strategic insights and create innovative content. Do cool stuff with them at milo.agency, and we thank them for their support. Joining me in studio, Andrew Landau. He is a really interesting guy because he is the leader of, well, this time anyway, of a startup that recently got acquired by Capital One named Use Jewel, or Jewel, basically, right? And as I understand it, it is a luxury rebate company. So what exactly is the top line news on that?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having us here. Really, really appreciate it. About 2 weeks ago, Jewel got acquired by Capital One, and we're really excited. Jewel is a Detroit-based luxury e-commerce company, and the opportunity to partner with Capital One was amazing, and then now we're part of the broader organization.
So what I really want to get to on this conversation is that this isn't your first rodeo. You know, you've done things, you've had multiple projects in the past. I remember specifically Chalkfly, because I used to work somewhere that bought from Chalkfly because Chalkfly sold green paper clips. And that was the differentiator for them. And so I remember that. So kind of you have an experience with the Detroit startup community that I think would be really valuable for our listeners around kind of your journey and some of the things that you've learned along the way. So I guess first off, you know, this is A, not your first company, B, not your first company in Detroit. So why are you doing this in Detroit? Or why have you been doing this in Detroit?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's a couple things. First of all, my family was born and raised in Detroit, and this is where I went to school. This is where I grew up. And I believe from my experience, there's really no better place to start a business. I think there's a culture here. There's a community. There's people that want you to succeed. And prior to being in Detroit this time, I've lived in Phoenix. I've lived in Chicago. I've lived in New York. And I believe that Detroit has a unique culture that's really special. And there's really no better place to be an entrepreneur.
So how did you come up with the idea of your most recent project for these luxury rebates?
So the quick sort of overview of the mechanics of Jewel is users come to our site. We're partnered with over 400 luxury retailers. If a consumer buys through Jewel via one of these retailers, they get cash back. And so these retailers are going after the aspirational consumers. And really, we think at Jewel, just because you spend a lot of money, it doesn't mean you don't want a good deal. And so Jewel allows people to get access to these consumers, or Jewel allows these brands to get access to these consumers, but in a brand safe environment. And so I think there's a couple trends that are happening in the digital e-commerce space. One, obviously, people are looking to buy more and more products online. And then two, obviously, luxury is an opportunity that's relatively underpenetrated via other verticals. And so with Jewel, it allows these brands to get these aspirational consumers, and it also gives these consumers the opportunity to shop and discover these luxury brands.
So I know that doing a little bit of research, you raised a small amount of angel funding with this, but how did you know that you even before then, you had some traction with this thing? How did you know that you were kind of in the right lane?
I think with the startup, you never know. But I think what we've done, hopefully well, is one, we have a really great group of passionate individuals, and two, every day we set individual goals, and along with that, we have not only daily goals but weekly goals and monthly goals. And so we knew there was an opportunity in this space, and I think by working hard, by working smart, by really just bringing a great group of people together, we've been able to focus every day on trying to grow a business, and we've been lucky for this stage, a business that's under 2 years old, to have this opportunity to be part of Capital One.
What about being in Detroit helped accelerate your business?
So I'm obviously biased because I love Detroit, but I think there's a few things. So I know I alluded to it before. I think there is a fantastic talent pool here that not only wants to be part of entrepreneurial endeavors, but also wants to be part of the greater community. And so that to me has brought people that are interesting and dynamic and diverse, and that passion that people may have outside of their professional lives, I think they also bring into their business lives. And so if you can create a community of great people that are passionate and positive, I really believe anything can happen. And that is something that you may not have in other cities.
I see that a lot. The kinds of businesses that truly dig in and start here, there are people who really care about whatever, not only just the city, but also what they're doing. I think passion in general is a theme that I see across the board with the successful businesses here. So what are some of the key things, if there was a few different key things that folks should know about when they're getting going? And maybe they're looking at, I don't know if you're familiar at all with the concept of Seth Godin and the dip, right? You come up to it and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can get through this. This is really hard. How for you, what are some of the tips you have to get kind of past that dip?
So I think there's the few things that we've tried to utilize at Jewel. So one is really being goal oriented. So not everything that you do, not every action has to be perfect, but you need to be going forward. You need to be making moves. You need to know where you want to go. And so I think if you work every day towards a common goal, you really can get anything done. And I think the other thing, one of the lessons that I've learned, being in the entrepreneurial space now for a while, is at the end of the day, it's all about the people. If you get great people to work with you, if you can inspire a culture of action and creating something bigger than yourself, then you can do whatever you want. And I think in Detroit, along with other cities, great people have the opportunity to do many things. And so you need to create an environment and a culture where the best of the best choose to spend time. And I think if you can do that, sky's the limit on what you can accomplish.
And then I think another one I wanted to kind of go down a little bit. I have heard from multiple folks that sometimes funding can be a little bit more challenging here as opposed to other areas because we're not in the Valley, right? What were some of the things for angel funding, for things along the line, just general things that you've learned that helped you go along the way?
I think there's a couple things. So funding is challenging, but what I've seen over the last 5 or 6 years, specifically in Detroit, that if you have a good business, if you have opportunities, the money will be there. I think being in Detroit has a lot of competitive advantages. And the fact that a lot of the larger VCs aren't based in Michigan, I don't think is an excuse for not having the opportunity to raise money. I think for us, it's saying, okay, we're going after a large market. We have a unique value proposition. We want to create something really special and something large. And I think if you have those traits and you have growth, the capital is there.
I mean, some of these things are kind of universal, right? Scale, large, basically the size of the opportunity for angels and venture capitalists, right?
Exactly. There are plenty of different sources of capital. And so it's not always going to venture capital groups or angel investors. You can have other friends and family. There's banks. There's a lot of ways for capital. And I think it's really important when you're starting or growing a business to understand your capital needs and then to look for those appropriately. It's not about getting in the newspaper. It's not about raising millions of dollars. It's about needing the capital that you need to build a successful business. And if you have that, then you'll be all right.
So what's kind of next? So this acquisition happened. What you guys staying in Detroit is what's the story there?
Yeah. So one of the important things for us was continuing to build and grow this business in Detroit. So there's 6 full-time people right now at Jewel. We are certainly going to grow significantly over the coming years in terms of adding headcount. Jewel is going to be based in Detroit. We'll obviously have a lot more resources to add to its marketing and other pieces of the business. I think we're just at chapter 1. I'm personally really excited to just continue sort of being part of the broader entrepreneurial community. And, who knows where we'll go.
That's great. And if people want to know more and participate in what's going on, are you guys going to be looking to hire soon, or what's the story with that?
Yeah, so we're actively hiring for multiple positions, whether you're in engineering, marketing, account management, et cetera. My email is andrew@usejewel.com. So again, it's andrew@usejewel.com. And you also can go to our website, which is usejewel.com, to find out more.
So here's what else you should know today around Metro Detroit. The board of the Grosse Pointe Public Schools, serving a number of east side suburbs near the Detroit border, has voted to close 2 elementary schools. The axe is hitting Trombley Elementary in Grosse Pointe Park and Poupard in Harper Woods. The closures have been controversial as the district isn't drawing as many kids to their schools. Grosse Pointe is somewhat unique in that it does not participate in Michigan's School of Choice program, so you have to live within the district in order to go to their schools. Also, changing demographics in the community have drawn charges by some that the closures are racially motivated. Poupard, after all, has a majority African-American school population. This matters as Grosse Pointe has a tattered history when it comes to race relations. For many years, there were explicit restrictions on Jews, Catholics, immigrants, African Americans, and other minorities from buying homes. The district is one of the highest performing academically in the state and in one of the highest income communities, but still faces multi-million-dollar reductions in revenue because of how schools are funded in Michigan, with money tied to the number of students. Grade levels there are also changing, with elementary schools now serving kindergarten through 4th grade and middle schools 5th through 8th grade. High schools will remain the same. The site of the Hazel Park Race Track is going to get a new lease on life. German battery maker Akasol is planning a $40 million manufacturing plant there, according to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. They awarded a $2.4 million grant, saying the project would create 224 jobs. Akasol boasts the largest battery system plant for commercial vehicles in Europe. Metro Detroit was selected over a site in Georgia. There was no timeline for the project shared, but Akasol is hiring. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. Now some food and drinking news. Permit and licensing issues have closed 2 fun spots, one temporarily and one might be permanent. First, Cold Truth in Eastern Market. According to an Instagram post, the soft serve place that also carries vegan options will be closed until June 2nd over a licensing issue with the city of Detroit. And secondly, the Villages Biergarten may be done. It's in a neat spot on Van Dyke near Jefferson on the border of Indian Village and West Village. And personally, I've had some pretty good times there over the last 3 years, and even before that when it was ran by another group as the Tashmoo Biergarten. The beer garden has been operated as a partnership, including the nonprofit Villages CDC and their operator, Brute Detroit, but in part due to an audit from the Michigan Liquor Control Commission, the results of which apparently have not been shared with the operators by the state. The decision was made to pull the plug on the event this year. We'll have a link to the social media post in the show notes. Third, and finally, a Detroit dive bar might make a return. The Stonehouse Bar on Ralston Street near State Fair in Woodward has a giant sign that says they'll reopen in the fall of this year. It had been closed over liquor license issues in the past. Its old Tripod website, yes, Tripod, says that the building it is in is a house from the 1860s, and the basement was a hangout of the infamous Purple Gang. That website time machine, complete with animated Homer beer gifs, is at thestonehousebar.tripod.com. And it's amazing it still exists, people. I really suggest you check it out for a good old ye old website time loop. And when I know more about this possible reopening, I'll be sure to tell you more. All right, we're done for today. Here's a couple ways you can help push Detroit's conversation forward. Be sure to tell a friend about the Daily Detroit podcast. Let's climb up those Apple Podcast charts, and that happens through more people subscribing. So let's make that happen. And if you really love what we're doing, you can join us as a member at patreon.com/Daily Detroit. That helps keep everything fueled around here. So until tomorrow, for Sven, Randy, Cheyenne, and the team, I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.